I never set out to become a billionaire. I was just looking for a cheap SATA controller for a vintage server build. Saturday flea markets are my sanctuary. It's where old tech goes to die, and where I give it a second chance at life. Yellowed keyboards, dusty motherboards, tangled cables. It's quiet work, safe work. Or so I thought. That morning, I found a cardboard box tucked under a table belonging to a guy who looked like he hadn't slept since the 2011 market crash. Hard drives, $5 each, he muttered, eyes bloodshot, from a storage locker auction. Don't know what's on them, don't care. I pulled out 3. One was a scratched 1 terabyte Western Digital from 2011, a simple slab of aluminum and magnetic platters. Back at my shop, I plugged it into a docking station. The drive groaned, a painful mechanical screech. Most of the folders were digital landfill, low-res movies, sociology term papers, corrupted photos from a party a decade ago. I was seconds away from a permanent format when I saw a hidden directory. The name was simple: wallet_backup_old. Inside was a file named wallet.dat. My palms went cold. I launched an old Bitcoin Core client. The synchronization began, percent by agonizing percent. And then the numbers hit the screen. 114,782 BTC. I laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. It had to be a glitch. But I checked the public address on the blockchain. Balance? Confirmed. Last activity? April 2013. At today's price, that wasn't just money. It was over $6 billion. It was the power to crash markets or buy a small country. The wallet wasn't encrypted. No password. The owner had been incredibly arrogant, or he never lived long enough to set one. That's when the fear replaced the adrenaline. Money on that scale doesn't get lost by accident. And if it does, the people looking for it are already closer than you think.
I didn't move the coins. I didn't tell a soul. I ripped the internet cable out of the wall and copied the wallet to 3 encrypted drives. Then I waited. 2 days later, my world went dark. My fiber optic line didn't just glitch, it was severed. My phone lost all signal. The lights in my apartment flickered, then dimmed, as if someone were draining the grid. I looked through the blinds. A black SUV sat idling across the street. No plates. I didn't panic. I knew that if they wanted me dead, they wouldn't have parked where I could see them. I walked out calmly. 3 men in tailored suits stepped out. They didn't have local police badges. They didn't have FBI credentials. They had the look of men who exist outside of public records. One of them smiled politely. "Mr. Hale, we need to discuss a storage device." They took me to a building downtown with no logo and no windows. A woman in her 40s with eyes like flint spoke first. Those coins were mined by a government research team. They were stolen in 2013. "Which government?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "That depends on which border you're standing on." Then her assistant whispered something in her ear. Her face went pale. "It appears," she said, looking back at me, "that you are not the only one who found that drive, and the other parties aren't as polite as we are." The news broke quietly at first. Dormant Bitcoin whale awakens. Markets shook. My phone, which had mysteriously regained service, started screaming. "You have something that belongs to powerful friends," said a voice with a heavy Eastern European accent. Click. "We can offer you sanctuary," said a voice from a Southeast Asian syndicate. "We will find you," said a third. It wasn't just governments, it was every ghost in the global machine, crime syndicates, cartels, and rogue agencies. That night, my apartment was professionally ransacked. They tore the walls open, but they didn't find the drive. They made one fatal mistake. They assumed I was greedy.
They assumed I would try to cash out and hide. Instead, I contacted an international legal team and a public blockchain transparency organization. If I stayed in the shadows, I'd die in the shadows. I decided to move the money into the light. I called a press conference, live streamed to 10 million people. No filters, no masks. I showed the blockchain address on the screen. I am in possession of this wallet, I told the world. I did not steal it. I bought it for $5 at a flea market, and I will not transfer these funds to any government or any private interest. The markets froze. This wallet will be placed into a public trust. The funds will be used for open source cybersecurity, independent journalism, and humanitarian tech. It will be governed by an international consortium. No one person or state will hold the key. The silence that followed was deafening. By making it public, I made the money radioactive. No government could seize it without admitting it was theirs and admitting to the secrets hidden within the code. Exposure was worse for them than losing the money. The suits backed off. The SUVs disappeared. I didn't become a billionaire, not personally. I kept a legally audited finder's fee, enough to buy a quiet house by the ocean and never check a price tag again. The rest became something bigger. Years later, someone asked me if I regretted not keeping the $6 billion. I thought about the SUV, the break-in, the feeling of a target on my back. I smiled. No, I said. Some money isn't meant to belong to one person. It's meant to change the world. Somewhere on the blockchain, that address still sits. Public, transparent, untouchable.
They say money doesn't smell. They're wrong. $2 million in vacuum-sealed plastic has a very specific scent. It smells like ozone, old paper, and a death warrant. My name is Mark Keller. In the world of car auctions, I'm a flipper. I buy what the insurance companies call totaled. The flooded, the smashed, the forgotten. I fix them just enough to pass an inspection and sell them before the check engine light comes back on. It's a gray life, but it was my life. Until lot number 4482, a 2019 Toyota Camry. The Copart listing was a dream. Freshwater flood, no mechanical damage, interior, minor stains. I won it for $6,800. In my head, I was already spending the $5,000 profit. The car arrived on Tuesday, smelling of river silt and stale air. I started stripping the interior, seats out, carpet up, drying out the electronics. It was routine, until I reached for the rear bench. Something heavy shifted, something that wasn't a seatbelt tensioner. I reached into the frame and felt a cold, hard rectangle. I sliced the plastic. Bricks of cash, vacuum sealed, stacked with the precision of a Swiss watch. $2 million. I sat on the cold concrete for an hour staring at that Camry. Nobody forgets $2 million. This wasn't a stash, it was a payload designed to survive a border search. I ran a deep VIN check. This car hadn't just been flooded, it had been seized by Border Patrol, released under unusual circumstances, and then flooded just in time for the auction. It was a laundered ghost, and I just invited it into my house.
Narrator. 2:17 a.m. The garage was pitch black, lit only by the glowing embers of my cigarette. Then my phone buzzed. Nice Camry, Mark. My heart didn't just beat, it hammered. I looked at the garage door, locked. I looked at the windows, covered. Then I crawled under the chassis with a flashlight. There, tucked inside the frame rail, was a GPS tracker. Its tiny red eye was blinking, steady and mocking. I crushed it with a floor jack. My first mistake. By sunrise, a black SUV was idling across the street. No lights, no plates, just a silent, predatory presence. I knew then, this wasn't a robbery. A robber would have kicked the door down. This was a professional recovery. I grabbed a backpack, shoved one $10,000 bundle inside, my insurance policy, and bolted for the Camry. I thought if I could get to a public place, I'd be safe. I was wrong. 10 minutes into the drive, 3 sets of headlights boxed me in. The pit maneuver sent me spinning. Sound, tires screeching, a violent crash, the hiss of an airbag deploying. Through the smoke, a man leaned into my window. He wasn't a thug. He wore a tailored suit and smelled of expensive sandalwood. "Relax, Mark," he said, his voice as calm as a Sunday morning. "We just want our property. But now you've made it complicated." He gave me 3 choices: die, run, or work. I chose the job. Or so I thought.
3 months passed. I tried to go legit. I closed the garage, took a job in fleet inspections, and waited for the axe to fall. It didn't, until the email came. "Congratulations, you won lot 9921. I hadn't even opened the website. The car arrived the next day. Same model, different VIN. I tore it apart in 10 minutes. Same cash, same packaging. That's when the gears finally turned in my head. They weren't just moving money, they were using the entire US auction infrastructure as their private courier service. We, the flippers, the rebuilders, the guys who don't ask questions, we were the veins, and the money was the blood. I called the number back. "What if I say no this time?" "You already said yes," the voice replied. "The moment you opened that seat, you became a part of the car, and we never scrap a working part." I became their ghost mechanic. I learned the patterns, which auctions to bid on, which accidents were staged to hide compartments. I saw diamonds, hard drives, passports. I was making more money than I could ever spend, but I was living in a cage made of Toyota parts. The shift happened with a BMW M4. Too clean, too expensive. I opened the hidden compartment, expecting the usual bricks. Nothing. Empty. Just a burner phone sitting in the dark. It rang the second I touched it. A different voice, rough, urgent. "You weren't supposed to open that one, Mark. That's a collector's car." I realized then I was being moved. I wasn't the courier anymore. I was the target. They were positioning me to take a fall for a shipment that didn't exist, a distraction for something much larger. I looked at the phone, then at the garage door. Most people in my position would pray. I just reached for my welding torch. If they wanted me to be a part of the machine, fine. But I spent my life taking machines apart and putting them back together better than the factory intended. I didn't run. I didn't call the cops. I did what I do best. I flipped the script. I started welding, not to hide their money, but to hide my own surprises for the next guy who opened the seat. I'm not the guy under the bench anymore. I'm the one designing the trap. Sound, the sound of a welding torch sparking to life. Music swells and cuts to black. Narrator, because in this game, if you aren't the one driving, you're just cargo. And I'm tired of being cargo.
The bidding ended in less than 3 minutes. I wasn't even planning to win. I came for the experience. I'd been watching storage auction videos for months, reading forums, learning how it actually worked. Most units were unpaid for 90 days before being listed. The renter was notified multiple times. Then the lock was cut in front of bidders. You could only look from the doorway. No touching, no digging. Unit 47, cash only. As is, no access before purchase. The facility was older, on the edge of an industrial district. Westfield storage, faded sign, security cameras that looked newer than the buildings. The metal door of Unit 47 was rusted at the bottom. The original lock had clearly been cut months ago and replaced with the facility's standard latch. A yellow sticker showed the delinquency date. No one knew who stopped paying for it. The manager claimed the renter had gone silent, no forwarding address. No one cared, except me. Inside, from what little I could see, there weren't trash bags or broken mattresses like in most units. I saw wooden crates, covered furniture, organized stacks. 500. Someone behind me scoffed. 700. Silence. The auctioneer looked around. Sold. My stomach dropped. That wasn't part of the plan. I paid in cash, signed the standard form. The contract clearly stated contents only, no guarantees. Personal documents must be returned to the facility office if found. The storage manager handed me the key. Most of these are junk, he said. Old furniture. People overestimate what they leave behind. He wasn't wrong. At first. I lifted the garage door slowly. It screeched in protest. The smell hit me. Oil, leather, dust, paper that had been sitting untouched for months. I stood still and let my eyes adjust. Stacked wooden crates, 2 metal filing cabinets, a vintage trunk with reinforced corners, a garment rack wrapped in plastic. Everything was clean. No random clutter, no fast food wrappers, no chaotic packing. It looked intentional, like someone stored valuables, not leftovers. I stepped fully inside and shut the door behind me halfway for privacy. That's when I noticed the first detail. A leather case on top of one crate. Dark brown, high quality, not something bought at a mall. The monogram wasn't scribbled, it was embossed in gold. W-R-H. 3 letters. My pulse quickened. I opened it carefully. Inside were 6 watches, mechanical, heavy, Swiss brands I recognized even from a distance. The weight alone told me they were real. Each had documentation, certificates, serial numbers. This wasn't flea market stuff. Then I found a flat document box. Inside were auction receipts from Geneva, London, Hong Kong, private sale documentation, appraisals. The name on the paperwork made my hands go cold. William R. Hargrove, tech investor, venture capitalist, board member in 3 global companies, declared dead 6 months ago in a private plane crash. I actually checked my phone right there inside the unit. The news articles were still online. Philanthropist and billionaire William R. Hargrove confirmed dead. I looked back at the crates. This wasn't junk. This was controlled storage of high-value assets, and I just bought it for $700. Then I heard footsteps outside, slow, measured, stopping right in front of Unit 47. I'd lowered the door halfway and turned off the portable light I brought. The footsteps stopped. A knock. Not aggressive, not rushed. Confident. "Ma'am?" I didn't respond. Another knock. "We believe this unit may contain property belonging to the Hargrove estate." The word estate hit differently when you're standing inside a garage full of Swiss watches. "I purchased this unit legally at auction," I said through the metal. There was a pause, not confused, calculated. "We understand that. We're prepared to discuss appropriate compensation." Compensation. So they knew what was inside. "How did you know someone bought it?" I asked through the metal. Silence. That told me everything. Storage auctions aren't publicly broadcast in detail. Only bidders attend. Results aren't advertised, which meant someone had been monitoring this unit specifically. I lifted the door slightly and looked through the gap. Black SUV, clean, no company logos, temporary tag. 2 men, one speaking to me, the other scanning the parking lot. That wasn't a law firm recovery team. That was private security. I sent a quick text to my friend Lena. If anything weird happens, Unit 47, Westfield Storage." She replied immediately, "What did you buy?" Inside the unit, I searched more carefully. Jewelry cases, sealed envelopes. Then I found a small fireproof safe bolted to the concrete, and inside one of the cabinets, a passport. Not expired, different name, same face as William Hargrove. That's when my brain stopped trying to rationalize it. He wasn't dead, he disappeared. The knock came again. "We can make this easy." Easy meant I would sign something and walk away quietly. Easy meant I'd never know the truth. I suddenly understood something else. If they truly represented the estate, they would have come with official documents, lawyers, court orders. Instead, they came with pressure, and that meant I had leverage. I couldn't leave the contents there overnight. Legally, once I bought it, I was responsible for clearing the unit within 48 hours. But if these men were watching, I needed a smarter approach. I called the facility office and reported 2 men harassing a buyer. That forced them to log the complaint. Then I called the police, not about the valuables, but about suspicious individuals attempting to interfere with private property. When a patrol car pulled in, the SUV drove away within seconds. That confirmed they didn't want official interaction. I didn't hire random movers. I called a licensed estate liquidation company. Higher cost, NDA option available. "Anything valuable?" the coordinator asked. "Possibly," I said carefully. They sent a truck with inventory forms and insurance coverage. While loading, one of the workers whispered, "This stuff is high-end." "I know." We photographed everything, documented serial numbers, signed transfer sheets. If this turned legal, I needed paperwork. Halfway to my house, I noticed headlights behind us. Same SUV. Not aggressive, just present. Close enough to be seen, far enough to deny harassment. At a red light, my phone rang. Unknown number. "You're escalating this unnecessarily," the voice said calmly. "If you represent the estate, send legal documents," I replied. A pause. "You bought access, not ownership." Legally, that wasn't entirely true. Storage auction laws vary by state. Buyers typically obtain rights to contents after lien sale, which meant they were trying to intimidate me into voluntary surrender. The light turned green. They stayed behind us all the way to my street. That night, I opened one sealed envelope. Inside was a letter. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Typed, signed, dated. It explained that Hargrove had uncovered large-scale financial manipulation within one of his companies. Offshore accounts, political funding channels, shell corporations. He suspected internal betrayal. The plane crash report, according to the letter, was falsified. The storage unit was a contingency plan, evidence separated from his primary residence, assets held as leverage. If the letter was genuine, I was sitting in the middle of a corporate war. The final paragraph. "If you are reading this and I have not contacted you personally, do not trust anyone claiming to represent my estate. Contact the law firm listed below." It listed a real international firm. The next day, I verified the firm independently. Then I called. 2 hours later, I received a return call from a senior partner. Calm, direct. They requested documentation of what I had found. 3 days later, a woman arrived at my house, not alone this time, with legal ID, with paperwork. She showed me court filings sealed from public record. Then she showed me something else, a live encrypted call. William Hargrove, alive, thinner, grayer, but real. He thanked me. The SUV men were not estate representatives. They were connected to the internal group he was building a case against. My purchase triggered a chain reaction. Over the next weeks, federal authorities became involved, financial regulators, international cooperation. The contents of Unit 47 were transferred under legal supervision. I didn't keep the watches, I didn't keep the jewelry, but under state lien sale law, I was entitled to compensation for lawful acquisition and cooperation. 3 months later, a wire transfer hit my account, large enough to change my life, fully documented, legal. What started as a $700 gamble turned into the most terrifying month of my life. Sometimes I still drive past Westfield Storage. Unit 47 has a new renter, clean lock, no yellow sticker. And every time I see it, I remember one thing. Storage units don't always hold junk. Sometimes they hold secrets people were willing to fake their own death to protect.
There is a theory that your life isn't a straight line. It's a fragile thread suspended over a canyon of chaos. Most days, you walk the tightrope without looking down. You pay your bills, you check your phone, you complain about the weather, you exist in the comfortable numbness of before. But eventually, the thread snaps. For me, the snap happened on a Tuesday, 6:42 p.m. I wasn't looking for trouble, I wasn't a hero in waiting, I was just tired. It was the end of a 10-hour shift where nothing mattered, and my only goal was to get home, reheat leftovers, and forget the day existed. I pulled into a 24-hour convenience store. You know the place. Fluorescent lights buzzing like angry insects, the smell of floor cleaner mixed with stale coffee. Then I walked to the back, grabbing a bottle of water and a loaf of cheap bread. Just the basics. I stood in line behind a teenager buying energy drinks and an old woman counting out pennies. It was boring. It was safe. That's the thing about violence. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask for permission. It just kicks the door down. The atmosphere in the room didn't just change, it evaporated. 2 men, black hoodies, ski masks. The first one, tall, twitchy, waved a pistol like he was conducting an orchestra of terror. "Get on the ground, hands, now. Do it now or I start shooting." There is a strange delay in the human brain, a lag. You see the gun, but your mind tries to reject it. Is this a prank? Is this a movie? Then the fear hits you like a physical punch to the gut. I dropped to my knees, the cold tile pressing against my cheek. I could see dust bunnies under the shelving unit. I focused on them. If I just look at the dust, maybe I'll disappear. Open the register. Don't look at me, look at the screen. Open it. The cashier was shaking so hard the keys rattled. It should have been a standard smash and grab. They take the cash, they leave, we go home with a terrifying story to tell at parties. But the universe had a different script that night. The door chime rang again, cheerful, unaware. Then the voice of steel. "Police! Drop the weapon!" An explosion of noise. Gunshots, loud, cracking, deafening, glass shattering, screams. The air turned into shrapnel. I didn't think. I rolled. I scrambled behind a display of soda bottles as bullets tore through the potato chip rack above me. Carbonated explosions rained sticky sugar water down on my neck. It wasn't a movie shootout. It was messy. It was loud. It smelled like sulfur and burnt plastic. I peeked through the gap in the bottles. The man who had entered, plain clothes, badge on a chain, was trading fire with the tall gunman. Robber 1, "He's a cop, kill him." 2 more shots, a heavy thud. The officer went down. He groaned, clutching his side. His gun skittered across the floor, just out of reach. The tall gunman stepped forward, leveling his weapon at the fallen officer. An execution in progress. Then, the gunman saw me. "Robber 1, you, get up." He pointed the barrel at my face. The The black hole at the end of that gun looked like the size of a tunnel. Robber 2, forget them, let's go. Robber 1, move, coward, or you're next. I looked at the officer. He was bleeding, badly, dark red pulsing onto the white tiles. His eyes were losing focus. I had a choice, a binary split in the timeline. Option A, I curl up in a ball and pray. The officer dies. Option B, I move and I probably die too. Self-preservation screamed at me, stay down, survive. But then I saw the officer's hand. He was reaching for me, not for help, but almost like an apology. Something in me snapped. Not bravery, just a refusal to watch a man die alone on a dirty floor. Sound, scuffling shoes, heavy breathing, grunt of exertion. Narrator, I lunged. I grabbed the officer under the arms. He was heavier than I expected, dead weight mixed with agony. Robber 1, hey! A shot whizzed past, a high-pitched zip, the shattering of a glass fridge door. Glass exploded over my shoulder. I didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I dragged him backward, my heels slipping in the spilled soda and blood. Officer, weakly, groaning, leave me. Shut up and move, I whispered. There was a storage door behind the counter. The second robber had moved to the front to cover the exit. The path was clear for a fraction of a second. I kicked the door open, hauled the officer inside, and slammed it shut. Door slam, the click of a lock, heavy, panicked breathing in a confined space. Total darkness. The closet was tiny. Mops, buckets, stacks of inventory boxes. It smelled of bleach and copper blood. Outside, the gunman pounded on the door. Come out, I'll burn this place down. I pressed my back against the door, sliding down to the floor. My hands were slick with the officer's blood. I found the wound, just above his hip. I need you to stay quiet, please. My gun. Where's my gun? It's gone. Just breathe. I took off my jacket and pressed it hard against the hole in his side. He gasped, his body arcing in pain. Who are you? Just a guy who wanted bread, I said. My voice sounded foreign. What's your name? Vance. Detective Vance. Okay, Vance. I'm holding the line here. You don't die on me. Not in a broom closet. We sat there, in the dark. Time distorted again. It felt like hours. Every sound outside was amplified. The crunch of glass, the shouting. Then sirens. Cops! Back door! Go! Then silence. The silence was worse than the noise. It was heavy, pregnant with threat. Was it a trap? Were they waiting? Vance's breathing was getting shallow. The hand gripping my wrist loosened. Vance? Vance, stay with me. You did good, kid. Usually people freeze. I did freeze, I admitted. My brain is still frozen. My body's just moving on its own. He let out a weak, wheezing laugh. That's all bravery is, being scared and moving anyway. The media called me a good Samaritan, a hero customer. I hated those words. Heroes wear capes and stand tall. I was a shivering mess who threw up in the police station parking lot after giving my statement. Vance survived. Surgery took 6 hours. The robbers were caught 2 days later, found hiding in a motel 3 towns over. Case closed. Roll credits. Except it doesn't end there. Trauma is a ghost. It haunts the quiet moments. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I'd close my eyes and see the gun barrel. I'd hear the crunch of the glass. I started analyzing everything. What if I hadn't stopped for water? What if I had been 2 seconds slower? What if the bullet was 2 inches to the left? The what-ifs will eat you alive if you let them. 3 weeks later, there was a knock at my apartment door. It was Vance. He looked rough, arm in a sling, walking with a cane, pale, but alive. He held up a 6-pack of beer with his good hand. Vance, I figured I owed you a drink, or 10. We sat at my kitchen table. For a long time, we didn't talk about that night. We talked about sports, the weather, the terrible hospital food. Then the mood shifted. Vance leaned forward. The detective came out. I need you to know something. That wasn't a random robbery. I froze. What do you mean? Vance, I was tracking them for months. They weren't just junkies looking for a fix. They were recruiting, finding desperate people, kids mostly, and convincing them that violence was the only way to fix their lives, burning down the world to feel warm. I remembered the fear in the cashier's eyes, the chaos. You walked into the middle of a war, my friend, and you saved a soldier. If you hadn't pulled me into that closet, they would have executed me to send a message. He looked me in the eye. You didn't just survive, you changed the outcome. Sound of city street ambience again. Birds chirping, normalcy. Months passed. The nightmares became less frequent. The color returned to the world. Yesterday, I walked past that convenience store. It looked different. New glass, fresh paint, a sign in the window advertising a sale on soda. People were walking in and out, laughing, checking their phones, just like that Tuesday. I stood on the sidewalk watching them. Any one of them could be next. Any one of us is just one wrong time, wrong place away from our lives shattering. We have zero control over the chaos. We can't control the gunmen, the accidents, the tragedies. But I realized something as I watched the automatic doors slide open. That ding-dong chime, but this time it sounds hopeful, bright. We don't control the event, but we control the response. That split second between the fear and the action, that is where we truly live. I'm not fearless now. If anything, I'm more aware of how fragile this all is. But I know that when the door bursts open and the darkness rushes in, I won't just freeze. There is always a choice. There is always a next step. There is always a way out. And sometimes the only thing standing between before and after is you. Sound of music swells, cinematic, resolving, hopeful but grounded. End.